Student body president candidate Christian Newton had his disqualification reversed. Opioid Awareness Week aims to educate students on the deadly epidemic, and Texas A&M librarians are struggling with the loss of tenure that caused them collective trauma. I'm Caroline Wilburn, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Batt Signal. On Friday, March 31st, the Texas A&M Judicial Court reversed the disqualification of biomedical sciences junior Christian Newton for the 2023-24 student body president election in the Christian Newton versus Election Commissioner Joe Giannini case. Here to tell us more is news editor Kenzie Finch. Kenzie, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So, can you tell us what led up to this trial?
Yeah, so Newton filed for a writ of certiorari following his disqualification on March 3rd due to the allegations of falsifying documents for multiple shell companies and undervaluing donated items. The two statutes brought against Newton via email by Election Commissioner Yasaswi Giannini were as follows. Falsification of documents referring to the intentional and substantive corruption of documents that undermines the transparent nature of the election, and disqualification only to be applied in cases where the violation can be confidently determined to undermine the free, fair, and safe nature of the election, or the candidate has committed an act which prevents them from maintaining qualification. The A&M Judicial Court stated that in order to meet the standards of falsified documents, there must be, quote, intentional and substantive corruption of document. The court did not find Joe Giannini's argument to meet this criteria, and she failed to provide concrete evidence to support the claim. The claim against Newton also stated he accepted supplies below what is called fair market value. Due to the items being previously used, they were classified as donations and were required to be given at a fair market value. The election commissioner used a football helmet that was sold to Newton for $1 as an example of undervaluing, but did not discuss the other 19 items they cited as undervalued.
Okay, and what else did the court find after investigation?
So the court did find several minor violations made by Newton, such as not properly itemizing invoices 5 and 7 using the same customer ID. But however, the violations would have resulted in fines that didn't exceed Newton's budget, so the court said it didn't warrant a disqualification. However, the dissenting opinion from the court argues that the various minor violations equated to a major violation by going over budget that justifies the qualification, according to Chapter 601, Article 6, Section 3A1. Of the Student Government Association or SGA code. The majority opinion said the accumulation of minor infractions were not a cause for disqualification, though.
Okay, and what was Newton's motivation for challenging his disqualification?
Newton said the main purpose of appealing the disqualification was actually not to get back into the race, but rather to show that he and his team honored the core values. He said, quote, "It wouldn't have changed the outcome of the election, if you will, and so it wasn't the first thing that I thought about doing. People talking about my potential expulsion and suspension, and I thought, this is wrong, and this is something that I don't want here by my name or my team's name."
And so what does this mean for Newton moving forward?
Ultimately, Newton's disqualification was reversed, but the statements made regarding the violations won't be removed. A statement released by the court said, quote, "The court hereby finds the Election Commission's decision to disqualify the petitioner to be invalid. Furthermore, the court will not mandate the Election Commission to retract any statements made regarding the violations of the spring 2023 election. The petitioner's request for the reversal of his disqualification is hereby granted." End quote.
All right, well, the battalion will continue to follow any updates regarding this case. Kenzie, thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you for having me.
In response to a growing opioid epidemic and the increasing number of overdoses from drugs like heroin and fentanyl, Texas A&M has formed the Opioid Task Force. Now, months of planning has come to fruition with Opioid Awareness Week, with 5 days of events scheduled to show A&M a deeper look into the opioid epidemic. Here to tell us more is news writer Nicholas Gutteridge. Nico, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us more about what motivated A&M to create this task force and organize Opioid Awareness Week?
Yeah, so from 2020 to 2021, the number of opioid-related emergency department visits in Brazos County increased from 33 to 41, as nationwide trends indicate the opioid epidemic is worsening. Statistics in the CDC show that the number of opioid-related deaths in Texas increased to 4,172 from 3,136 in 2020. In that same year, there were 202 deaths from opioids in the public health region that Brazos County is located in. In response, the Opioid Task Force and the Students for Sensible Drug Policies organization have partnered to organize Opioid Awareness Week, a 5-day event taking place on April 10th to 14th, intended to inform Texas A&M on the scale of the crisis.
So what's the main goal of this task force that has been formed?
The Opioid Task Force, or OTF, was created in 2018 to inform the A&amp community about opioid use, according to co-chair of the task force, Masia Ori, PhD. The force focuses on two main endeavors: training healthcare providers to be more aware of pain management and solutions, and, once someone is addicted, treating it as a disease to be cured. Ori said opioids are pain relief drugs that were prescribed often in the 1990s. They work through the brain, providing a euphoric feeling in the process, and can be manufactured into different forms, such as morphine, heroin, and fentanyl. One of the biggest issues is that almost any drug today that was not prescribed by a licensed healthcare provider could be laced with deadly fentanyl, Ori said. While not many overdoses have occurred at A&M, she talked about personal instances where she had to restock nurses with Narcan who would use them to reverse overdoses in students.
So can you tell us more about what Opioid Awareness Week will look like and what it will contain?
Yeah, so the first day, April 10th, will involve raising overall awareness about the epidemic, with student ambassadors placed at the Memorial Student Center, or MSC, and the School of Public Health to talk about the initiative and answer any questions students may have. The second day will focus on education and remembrance, with individuals being able to memorialize and remember those lost to the crisis, also taking place in the MSC. A symposium will take place the third day, with keynote speakers and panelists discussing opioid use in the MSC Bethencourt Ballroom from 1 to 3 p.m. The fourth day will involve university-wide opioid and naloxone administration training on Zoom from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and 3:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. The fifth day will finish the event with an ice cream social in Verda Plaza, where people can meet the OTF student ambassadors who helped organize and carry out the event.
So what are students saying about the opioid crisis?
I spoke with biology freshman Austin Coleman, who said the opioid epidemic is becoming more dangerous and talked about every day. Coleman said that he hears stories about overdoses a few times every week on social media. Coleman also said that he has heard about fentanyl and that a very small dose can be lethal. He said opioids are killing a lot of young people in America. I also spoke with business freshman Kajul Patel, who shared the sentiment, signaling her support for increased awareness about opioids. Patel said she thinks opioids are a big problem, with people secretly getting addicted to it and they just can't stop taking it. They end up overdosing and dying, and a lot more people are doing that now, Patel said.
All right, well, it sounds like a very informative and important event taking place next week. Thank you so much for your time, Nico.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Librarians losing tenure status caused a collective trauma. Here to tell us more is news writer Emilia Gamez. Emilia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about how librarians are feeling after losing their tenure status at A&M?
Yeah, so Allison Valor, an assistant professor and business librarian at Texas A&M, wrote a guest post about the A&M library transition back in October of 2021. The blog post is featured on This Liaison Life, a blog page that focuses on library topics by Steve Kramer. This transition came as President M. Catherine Banks released the My Path Forward report in October 2021. Banks said that university libraries would serve as a service unit. As a result, faculty would lose tenure if they stayed to become a staff librarian or could transition into another department, according to the report. Valor said that caused a collective trauma. According to Valor, everyone at the library felt the effect of the decision, as staff questioned job security and faculty weighed their opinions of staying or leaving.
So what happened to those staff who chose not to stay?
Faculty who chose to leave had to transition into an academic department on their own. Due to lack of guidance, faculty got into departments through their connections, she added. To make such an important decision and follow through, the transition process was rushed, Valor said. The two options forced Valor to choose what she valued. She would have received tenure less than a year after the announcement of the report. Remaining at the library would mean she would not receive her tenure.
And so do other librarians share the same sentiment as her?
Yes. Bruce Herbert, a professor and former director of the Office of Scholarly Communications in the Sterling C. Evans Library, said he was surprised when he first heard the news about the changes to the library. He said he was interested in the reason why. Herbert said probably the hardest thing for many of the librarians was trying to find a potential home, a new department to go to, and that was left to each librarian to negotiate.
Okay, and what happened to those who chose to stay and keep their tenure?
Herbert said librarians' professional identity is wrapped up in being a librarian, and those librarians who thought it was important to keep tenure now have a different professional identity. In addition, the librarians who stayed, too, also have a very challenging role as they try to run an organization with very few people, Herbert said.
Listeners can read more about Valor's blog post and Emilia's story that will be available on thebat.com next week. Emilia, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
For more information on all the stories featured in today's episode, visit our website at thebat.com or pick up a print edition on stands every Thursday. This week's contributors are Kenzie Finch, Nico Gutteridge, and Emilia Gamez. Make sure to check out previous episodes of the Batt Signal, Home Turf, and Calculated Culture, available wherever you get your podcasts.